The Temple of Stars was the most sacred place in the known galaxy. It floated in the darkness of space, orbiting a dying star that pulsed with ancient light. The station was massive, larger than most moons, built from metals and crystals that no living species could name. The Firstborn had created it 9 million years ago, long before any current civilization had learned to walk upright. They had vanished into the void, leaving behind only this monument and the mysteries locked within its halls. Every species in the galactic concord sent pilgrims to the temple. The Kethsari came with their scaled bodies and sharp claws. The chorus mind arrived in great swarms, their insect bodies moving as one. The crystalline architects floated through its corridors like living gems. Even the warlike Vorn made the journey, setting aside their weapons at the threshold line as the ancient laws demanded. But there were rules. Strict rules that no one had broken in 10,000 years. Only unarmed vessels could approach. Only those with permission from the high custodians could dock. Only during the sacred alignment could pilgrims enter the inner chambers. These laws were older than most civilizations. They were absolute. Captain Alara Vance knew all of this as her ship limped toward the temple's glowing spires. The Unz's Perseverance was not a beautiful ship. It had never been beautiful, but now it was something worse. Burn marks scarred its hull from plasma fire. Patches of emergency sealant covered holes where missiles had punched through. Half of its engines were dead. The other half screamed with the effort of keeping the vessel moving. Alara stood on the bridge, her hands gripped tight on the railing. She was tall for a human, with dark skin and gray eyes that had seen too much death. Her uniform was torn at the shoulder. Dry blood stained her collar. She had not slept in 3 days. Around her, the bridge crew worked in silence. There were only 12 of them left now. 12 out of the 67 who had started this journey. "Captain," said Lieutenant Chun from the sensor station. His voice was quiet. "I am counting 114 alien warships in the system. They have seen us." Alara nodded. She had expected this. The temple always had guardians. The Galactic Concord kept a fleet here at all times, watching over the sacred site. Today, that fleet was watching her. "Any response to our approach?" "Nothing yet." Chun paused. "Wait. The Kefsari flagship is powering weapons. The Vorm cruisers are moving to intercept." The bridge went cold. Alara felt the fear in her crew, but she did not let it show on her face. Fear was a luxury they could not afford. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small crystal. It was no larger than her thumb, but it contained more data than 1,000 libraries. This crystal held everything that the Ryshan people had ever been. Their songs, their stories, their science and their prayers. 6 billion years of civilization, compressed into a piece of glass. The Ryshan were gone now. Their homeworld was ash. Their colonies were silent graves. The Vorn hegemony had seen to that, burning their worlds one by one while the Galactic Concord watched and did nothing. The Ryshan had not been warriors. They had been dreamers, artists, thinkers. They had believed that the galaxy would protect them. They had been wrong. Alara had been there at the end. She had stood beside Ambassador Kieth as the sky turned red with fire. The old Ryshan had pressed the crystal into her hands with trembling fingers. "Please," Kieth had whispered, "take this to the temple. Let us be remembered. Let us not disappear." Alara had made a promise. She had held Kiev's hand as the ambassador died. She had carried that crystal through 3 star systems, fighting off Vorn hunters and Concord patrols. She had lost friends. She had lost her ship's doctor, her chief engineer, her first officer. She had lost too many people to count. But she had not lost the crystal. And she would not break her promise. The temple's defense arrays are activating, Chun reported. His voice shook slightly. Captain, they can destroy us in seconds. I know. We have no weapons. No shields. We cannot fight. I know. Ensign Park looked up from her station. She was the youngest of them, barely 20 years old. Captain, why would they let us through? We have no permission. We are breaking their most sacred laws. Alara looked at the view screen. The Temple of Stars filled the display, beautiful and terrible. Its spires reached toward the stars like fingers grasping at heaven. Lights moved along its surface, patterns that no human could understand. Because they are afraid, Alara said. The bridge crew stared at her. Afraid? Chun asked. Of us? We are one broken ship. They have 100 warships. Alara smiled, but there was no joy in it. They are not afraid of our weapons. They are afraid of what we represent. They are afraid of what it would mean to fire on us. She turned to face her crew. These 12 people had followed her across the galaxy. They had watched their friends die. They had kept going when any sane person would have stopped. The temple has laws, Alara continued. Old laws. If any species fires on a pilgrim vessel, armed or not, permitted or not, that species loses its right to the temple forever. Their ancestors are erased from the archive. Their future generations are banned from the sacred grounds. She pointed at the view screen. Every admiral out there is thinking the same thing. Is it worth destroying one human ship if it means losing the temple forever? Is it worth angering the custodians? Is it worth becoming the species that broke the oldest law in the galaxy? The Perseverance crossed the threshold line. Alarms screamed across 100 alien bridges. Targeting systems locked onto the human vessel. Weapons charged to full power. But no one fired. Alara watched the alien warships hold their positions. She saw the Vorn cruisers slow their approach. She saw the Kethsari flagship's weapons power down, then power up again, then power down once more. They were afraid. They were uncertain. They were waiting to see what would happen next. The Perseverance continued forward, alone and unafraid, toward the most sacred place in the galaxy. Alara clutched the crystal in her hand. Hold on, Kiev, she whispered. I am almost there. Behind her, the stars watched in silence as humanity made its first approach to the Temple of Stars. Admiral Vorth stood on the bridge of the Kethsari flagship Endless Fury. His scales were dark green, almost black, and his yellow eyes burned with cold anger. For 30 years, he had served the Dominion. He had fought in 12 wars. He had destroyed enemy fleets without mercy or hesitation. But today, his claws hovered over the firing command, and he could not press it. The human ship moved across his view screen like a wounded animal crawling toward water. It was small. It was damaged. It had no weapons, no shields, nothing that could threaten his mighty vessel. One word from Vorth, and 30 plasma lances would turn the Perseverance into dust and memory. Admiral, his weapons officer said, we have a clear shot. The humans have crossed the threshold line. They have violated sacred law. We are within our rights to destroy them. Vorth knew this. Every captain in the fleet knew this. The humans had no permission to approach the temple. They carried weapons, even if those weapons were broken. They had ignored every warning, every demand to turn back. By the letter of the law, they deserved death. But the law was not so simple. Vorth turned to his tactical display. 114 warships surrounded the Temple of Stars. Kethsari destroyers. Vorn battlecruisers. Architect observation vessels. Chorus mine swarm carriers. Ships from 20 different species, all watching the same small human vessel. All waiting for someone else to fire first. Open a channel to the Vorn command ship, Vorth ordered. The screen flickered, and the face of Commander Thorax appeared. The Vorm was massive, with gray skin like stone and 4 arms that ended in crushing claws. His species had burned the Ryshan worlds. His species hated humanity more than any other. "Admiral Vorath," Thorax growled, "have you come to discuss the human problem? I have come to ask why you have not destroyed them yourself." Thorax's eyes narrowed. "The same reason you have not. The temple laws. The humans broke the laws first." "Yes, but we would break them worse." Thorax leaned forward. "If I fire on that ship, the custodians will ban the Vorm from the temple, forever. Every Vorn ancestor in the archive will be erased. Every future Vorm will be denied entry. Is one human ship worth that price?" Vorath said nothing. He knew the answer. They both knew the answer. On another ship, far across the system, the Chorus mind calculated the situation with perfect logic. The mind was not one being, but millions tiny insects sharing a single consciousness. They saw the human vessel through 1,000 eyes. They measured its speed, its trajectory, its damage. They calculated the probability of successful destruction at 99.7%. But they also calculated the cost. The Chorus mind had existed for 2 million years. Their ancestors filled entire holes in the temple archive. Their history was written in crystal and light, preserved forever in the most sacred place in existence. One act of violence would erase all of it. The mind decided to wait. The mind decided to watch. Let someone else take the risk. The crystalline architects pulsed with confused light. Their bodies were made of living crystal, beautiful and ancient. They did not understand war. They did not understand violence. But they understood consequences. If anyone fired, the temple would respond. The custodians would judge. And the price would be terrible. So the architects waited too. Across the fleet, the same scene repeated. Species that hated each other. Species that had fought wars for thousands of years. All of them frozen by the same fear. All of them watching the human ship with growing unease. The humans had gambled everything on this moment. They had bet their lives that the old laws still mattered. They had bet that fear and tradition would protect them better than any weapon. And they were winning. On the bridge of the Endless Fury, Vorath's communications officer spoke up. "Admiral, we are receiving transmissions from the human vessel. They are broadcasting on all channels. What are they saying? They are requesting permission to dock. They say they come as pilgrims. They say they carry a sacred burden." Vorath laughed, a harsh sound like stones grinding together. "Pilgrims. They are criminals. They are trespassers." "Yes, Admiral. But they are also—" The officer hesitated. "They are also very brave." Vorath's laughter died. He looked at the view screen, at the tiny ship moving steadily toward the temple. He thought about what it must have taken to come here. A single vessel, alone against a fleet. No weapons. No allies. No hope of survival if anyone decided to fire. He thought about the stories he had heard about humans. The siege of Proxima, where a human colony held out for 3 years against a force 10 times their size. The Drift War, where human ships had charged into enemy formations with failing engines and broken weapons, fighting to the last breath. The Blackout Year, when humanity had lost contact with their home system and still refused to surrender. Humans were strange creatures. They were small. They were weak. They lived such short lives, but they did not know how to give up. They did not know how to accept defeat. It was annoying. It was frustrating. It was, Vorath admitted to himself, somewhat impressive. "Admiral," the weapons officer said again. "Your orders?" Vorath watched the human ship dock at one of the temple's ancient spires. He watched its engines power down. He watched small figures appear in the airlock, tiny humans stepping onto sacred ground that no human had ever touched before. He made his decision. "Stand down weapons," Vorith said. "Pull back to standard patrol distance." "Sir?" "You heard me. We will not fire. We will not be the ones to break the temple's peace." He turned away from the screen. "Let the custodians deal with them. This is not our responsibility." Across the fleet, similar orders were given. Weapons powered down. Ships pulled back. The moment of crisis passed. The humans had made it. Against all odds, against all logic, they had reached the Temple of Stars. But reaching it was only the beginning. Now they had to face the custodians. Now they had to explain why they had come. Commander Therax watched from his bridge as the human crew disappeared into the temple. His four hands clenched into fists. The Vorn had burned the Ryshan worlds. The Vorn had tried to stop this ship. The Vorn had failed. "This is not over," Therax whispered to himself. "The custodians will never accept them. The humans will fail, and when they do, we will be waiting." But deep in his heart, in a place he would never admit existed, Therax felt something he had not felt in a long time. He felt doubt. The humans were strange. The humans were unpredictable. And perhaps, just perhaps, the humans were going to surprise everyone. The airlock opened with a soft hiss, and Captain Alara Vance stepped onto the Temple of Stars. The floor beneath her feet was made of crystal. It was warm, almost alive, pulsing with soft light that seemed to respond to her presence. The walls curved upward into a ceiling so high that it disappeared into darkness. Strange symbols covered every surface, writing in a language that had been dead for 9 million years. Alara had seen many wonders in her life. She had watched binary stars dance around each other. She had walked on moons made of pure diamond. She had seen the great nebulae of the outer rim, clouds of color that stretched across light years. But this was different. This was sacred. Behind her, 11 crew members followed in silence. They were all that remained of the Perseverance's crew. Lieutenant Chen walked at her right side, his hand resting on a scanner that would do nothing against any real threat. Ensign Park stayed close, her young face pale but determined. The others spread out in a loose formation, their eyes wide with wonder and fear. They had trained for this moment. They had studied the temple's layout, its protocols, its history. But nothing could truly prepare them for being here. "Oxygen levels are normal," Chun said quietly. "Gravity is Earth standard. Temperature is comfortable. The temple is welcoming us." "Or preparing us," Alara replied. "Stay alert." They walked deeper into the temple. Corridors branched off in every direction, leading to chambers that had not been opened in thousands of years. Drones floated past them, small machines that watched with glowing eyes but did not interfere. The temple was aware of them. The temple was watching. After what felt like hours, they reached a vast open chamber. The ceiling here was transparent, showing the stars outside in all their glory. The pulsar that the temple orbited pulsed in the distance, ancient and dying, sending waves of light across the room. And in the center of the chamber, something appeared. It was light, pure light, shaped into a form that was almost humanoid, but not quite. It had no face, no features, just a brightness that hurt to look at directly. It floated above the floor, casting no shadow. The crew stopped. Alara felt her heart pounding in her chest, but she forced herself to step forward. "Hi, custodian," she said, bowing deeply. Ambassador Kieth had taught her the proper gestures of respect. She hoped she remembered them correctly. "Thank you for allowing us to enter." The being of light pulsed. When it spoke, the voice came from everywhere and nowhere, echoing in their minds rather than their ears. "I am Merual, Keeper of the Archive, Voice of the Firstborn. You are not welcome here, humans. Elara had expected this. She kept her voice steady. We understand that we have broken your laws, custodian. We know that we came without permission. You came with weapons. You came during the closed season. You came without a petition, without approval, without right. Meruel's light flickered. Every law that protects this sacred place, you have violated. Why should I not order your deaths? Because we did not come for ourselves. Elara reached into her pocket and pulled out the crystal. It caught the light of the chamber, glowing with its own inner fire. She held it up so the custodian could see. We come for the Ryshan. The chamber went silent. Even the drones stopped moving. Meruel's light shifted, becoming something that might have been curiosity. The Ryshan are gone, the custodian said. Their extinction was regrettable, but they filed no petition before their end. They have no claim to the archive. They could not file a petition. Elara's voice hardened despite her attempts to stay calm. The Vorn blockade cut them off from the rest of the galaxy. They tried to reach you. They sent messages, requests, pleas for help. None of them got through. That is unfortunate. But it does not change the law. Then change the law. The words hung in the air. Behind Elara, her crew held their breath. No one had ever spoken to a custodian like this. No one had ever demanded anything from the keepers of the temple. Meruel floated closer. Its light grew brighter, and Elara felt warmth spreading across her skin. She did not step back. She did not look away. You are bold, human. Bold and foolish. The laws of this temple are older than your entire species. They were written by the firstborn themselves. I cannot change them for the sake of one dead civilization. I am not asking you to change them for the Ryshan. Elara stepped closer, holding the crystal before her like a shield. I am asking you to change them for everyone. Someday, another species will face what the Ryshan faced. Someday, another world will burn while the galaxy watches and does nothing. When that happens, who will carry their memory? Who will make sure they are not forgotten? She gestured at her crew. We were there, custodian. We were there when the Ryshan world died. We heard their last songs. We held their hands as they passed into darkness. They trusted us with everything they were. They believed that we would find a way to save their memory. Her voice broke slightly, but she pushed on. A promise made to the dying carries no legal weight. I know that. But it carries weight to us. Humans do not forget. We cannot forget. Our dead stay with us forever, and now the Ryshan are our dead too. Meruel was silent for a long moment. Its light flickered and shifted, colors moving through it like emotions through a face. The drones resumed their movement, circling the chamber slowly. You speak of promises, the custodian finally said. You speak of memory and obligation. These are words that many species use. Few truly understand them. We understand them. Perhaps. Meruel turned, its light sweeping across the human crew. It seemed to study each face, reading histories and secrets that no human could hide. You have lost much to bring this crystal here. Friends, family, parts of yourself that you will never recover. Yes. And you did this for a species that was not your own. A species that your Concord abandoned. A species that most of the galaxy has already forgotten. Yes. The custodian's light dimmed slightly, becoming softer. This is unusual, Captain Elara Vance. This is very unusual indeed. It turned away, floating toward a massive door that Elara had not noticed before. The door was covered in the same ancient symbols as the walls, but these glowed with active light. I cannot give you what you want, Meruel said. Only the Concord can grant archive rights to a species. But I can give you a chance to make your case. The door began to open, revealing a chamber of even greater size beyond. I am summoning the representatives. You will speak to them. You will tell them what you have told me. Elara felt hope rising in her chest. Thank you, custodian. Do not thank me yet. Mirua's light flickered with something that might have been warning. The Vorn will be there. The species that burned the Ryshan worlds will have a voice in this decision. They will not want you to succeed. I know. And yet, you are not afraid? Elara smiled. It was a tired smile, worn down by grief and exhaustion, but it was real. I am terrified, custodian. But fear has never stopped humans before. Mirurao was silent for a moment. Then, for the first time, its voice carried something that sounded almost like respect. No, I suppose it has not. The grand atrium of the Temple of Stars had not seen a gathering like this in 300 years. Representatives from every major species in the galactic concord stood in a vast circle, their bodies and forms as different as the stars themselves. The Kefsari delegation hunched in one section, their scales gleaming under the ancient lights. The chorus mind swarm filled another, thousands of insects moving as one. The crystalline architects floated near the ceiling, their bodies catching and scattering the light. And the Vorn stood directly across from the entrance, their massive forms like mountains of gray stone. In the center of this circle stood 12 humans. Captain Elara Vance had never felt so small. She had faced enemy fleets. She had survived battles that should have killed her. But standing here, surrounded by beings that controlled entire galaxies, she felt like a child pretending to be an adult. She did not let it show. High Custodian Miruo floated above the assembly, its light serving as the only illumination in the vast space. When it spoke, every being in the atrium heard its words. The humans have come to make a request that has no precedent in our history. They wish to submit a civilization's memory to the archive on that civilization's behalf. The Ryshan are gone. They left no heirs, no representatives, no one to speak for them. The humans claim this right. A rumble went through the assembly. Some species murmured in confusion. Others growled in anger. The Vorn delegation stepped forward, and Ambassador Vorith spoke in a voice like grinding rocks. This is absurd, Vorith declared. His forearms were crossed over his massive chest, and his eyes burned with contempt. The Ryshan failed. Their extinction proves their unworthiness. A species that cannot protect itself does not deserve to be remembered. This is the way of the galaxy. The strong survive. The weak disappear. Why should we honor failures? Elara stepped forward to face him. She was barely half his size, but she did not flinch from his gaze. You are right, she said quietly. The atrium went silent. Even Vorith seemed surprised by her response. The Ryshan lost, Elara continued. They were not warriors. They did not have great fleets or powerful weapons. They were artists, scientists, dreamers. They spent their time creating beauty and seeking knowledge. They believed that the galaxy was a place of wonder, not war. They thought the Concord would protect them. She paused, letting her words sink in. They were wrong. She began to walk slowly around the circle, meeting the eyes of each species in turn. The Vorn came with fire and fury. They burned the Ryshan homeworld. They destroyed their colonies one by one. And the Concord did nothing. The Kethsari did nothing. The Chorus Mind did nothing. The architects did nothing. You all watched as an entire civilization was erased from existence. We had no treaty with the Ryshan, the Kefsari representative said defensively. We had no obligation to interfere. No, you did not. Elara's voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. And I am not here to blame you. I am here to ask you a question. She raised the crystal above her head. It caught the light of Miruo's form, glowing like a captured star. This crystal contains everything the Ryshan ever were. 6 billion years of history. Songs that will never be sung again. Stories that will never be told. Scientific discoveries that could have benefited every species in this room. Prayers to gods that no one else will ever worship. She lowered the crystal, cradling it in her hands like something precious and fragile. In their final days, the Ryshan did not fight. They knew they could not win. Instead, they spent their last hours encoding their entire civilization into this crystal. Every memory, every achievement, every dream. They worked until the fires reached their cities. They worked until the sky turned black. They worked until there was no one left to work. Her voice cracked, but she kept speaking. And when they were done, they gave it to us. They gave it to humans, the youngest and strangest species in the galaxy. They trusted us to carry their memory across the stars. They trusted us to find a way to save them, even after they were gone. She turned to face Vorith directly. You ask why we should honor the failures. I will tell you why. Because someday, every species in this room will face what the Ryshan faced. Someday, you will stand against an enemy you cannot defeat. Someday, your worlds will burn and your children will cry out for help that will not come. The Vorn ambassador's eyes narrowed, but he did not speak. When that day comes, Alara continued, you will want someone to remember you. You will want someone to carry your songs and your stories to the stars. You will want someone to make sure that your existence meant something, that you were more than just dust in the cosmic wind. She held up the crystal again. Humans remember. It is what we do. It is who we are. We carry our dead with us wherever we go. We tell their stories around our fires. We speak their names in our prayers. We do not let them disappear. She looked around the atrium, meeting the eyes of every species present. The Ryshan are dead now. We held their hands as they died. We heard their last words. We made them a promise. And humans do not break their promises. Not for fear. Not for politics. Not for anything. She walked back to the center of the circle, standing before Muro-Al's glowing form. I am not asking you to change the galaxy. I am not asking you to right every wrong or heal every wound. I am asking you for one small thing. Let the Ryshan be remembered. Let their crystal join the archive. Let their songs echo in these halls for the rest of time. She bowed her head. If you deny this request, we will leave. We will take the crystal back to Earth. We will build our own archive, our own temple, our own sacred place. And we will remember the Ryshan ourselves, alone if we must. But I am asking you not to make us do that. I am asking you to show that the Concord is more than just a collection of powerful species looking out for themselves. I am asking you to prove that this temple, this sacred place, still stands for something. She raised her head and looked directly at Muro-Al. The firstborn built this place to preserve memory. Not the memory of the strong. Not the memory of the winners. The memory of everyone who ever reached for the stars. The Ryshan reached. They reached their whole existence. Do not let their reach be forgotten. The atrium was silent. Alara stood alone in the center, 12 humans behind her, surrounded by the most powerful beings in the galaxy. She had said everything she could say. She had given everything she had. Now all she could do was wait. The silence in the grand atrium stretched on for what felt like eternity. Alara stood in the center, her heart pounding so loud she was sure everyone could hear it. The crystal felt warm in her hands, pulsing gently as if the Ryshan themselves were waiting for the answer. Then the Kethsari representative stepped forward. Admiral Vorith's scales had shifted to a lighter shade of green, something that Alara had learned indicated deep thought among his species. The human speaks of memory, Vorith said slowly. She speaks of carrying the dead. This is not something we understood about humans before. He turned to look at his delegation, then back at Alara. The Kethsari vote to allow the petition. A murmur ran through the atrium. Ilara felt hope surge in her chest, but she kept her face calm. One vote was not enough. The chorus mind spoke next, a million voices blending into one. We have calculated the value of memory. We have measured the cost of forgetting. The numbers support the human request. The chorus mind votes to allow. 2 votes. The architects pulsed with colorful light, communicating in their strange visual language. Finally, one of them floated down to speak. Beauty should not be lost. Knowledge should not be buried. The architects vote to allow. 3 votes. One by one, the species of the Concord made their voices heard. Some voted quickly, others after long discussion with their delegations. Some spoke of tradition and law. Others spoke of the future and what kind of galaxy they wanted to live in. Finally, only the Vorn remained. Ambassador Vorth stood like a statue, his forearms folded across his chest. His eyes had not left Ilara since she finished speaking. The weight of his gaze was like a physical force, pressing down on her shoulders. The Vorn burned the Ryshan worlds, Vorth said. His voice was flat, without emotion. We do not deny this. We do not apologize for this. The Ryshan were weak. In our culture, weakness is death. He paused, and something shifted in his expression. Something that might have been uncertainty. But the human is not weak. The human crossed the galaxy alone. The human faced our fleets without weapons. The human stood before this assembly and demanded justice for the dead. He uncrossed his arms and stepped closer to Ilara. She held her ground, though every instinct screamed at her to back away. We killed the Ryshan because they could not defend themselves. But you defended them even after they were gone. You carried their memory through fire and war. You brought them here, to the most sacred place in existence, and you demanded that they be remembered. Vorth's massive head tilted slightly. This is strength. Strange strength. Alien strength. But strength nonetheless. He turned to face Murual. The Vorn vote to allow the petition. The atrium erupted in noise. Species that had been silent now spoke all at once. Delegates turned to each other in shock and confusion. The Vorn, the destroyers of the Ryshan, had voted to preserve their memory. Murual's light flared bright, and silence fell again. The vote is complete, the custodian announced. The Galactic Concord has granted archive rights to the Ryshan people, to be submitted on their behalf by the humans of Earth. This is the first time in the history of the temple that such a thing has occurred. Ilara let out a breath she did not know she had been holding. Tears streamed down her face, but she did not wipe them away. Behind her, she heard her crew crying as well. They had done it. Against all odds, against all logic, they had kept their promise. Murual floated down until it was level with Ilara. Come, Captain. It is time to complete your journey. The custodian led them through corridors that grew older and stranger with each step. The walls here were covered in crystals of every color, each one containing the memory of a civilization that had passed into history. The Kethsari ancestors glowed green and gold. The chorus mine's first hive pulsed with organic light. Thousands of species, millions of years of history, preserved forever in this sacred place. They reached a chamber at the very heart of the temple. In the center stood an empty pedestal, waiting. Place the crystal here, Murual said, and the Ryshan will join the archive forever. Ilara walked forward slowly. She looked at the crystal one last time, remembering Ambassador Kieth's face, remembering the promise she had made. Then she placed it gently on the pedestal. The temple responded. Light exploded from the crystal, filling the chamber with colors that had no names. Images appeared in the air around them. Ryshan cities, beautiful and strange. Ryshan music, haunting and sweet. Russian children playing under alien skies. 6 billion years of history compressed into a single moment of wonder. And then something else happened. Deep within the temple, systems that had been dormant for 9 million years began to wake. Lights activated in forgotten corridors. Sealed doors whispered open. Ancient machines hummed with renewed purpose. Miroha's light flickered with something that Alara had never seen before. Surprise, wonder, maybe even joy. The firstborn left a message, the custodian said, its voice filled with awe. Encoded in the deepest archives of the temple. It was meant to activate when a species demonstrated a quality they valued above all others. What quality? Alara asked. We never knew. The temple has waited 9 million years for the answer. Miroal turned to face her, and its light was softer now, almost gentle. Today, it found it. A new voice filled the chamber, ancient beyond measure, speaking words that echoed across every ship in the system. Memory is the bridge between what was and what will be. Those who carry the memories of others carry the universe itself. Welcome, young ones. You are ready. The message ended, but its meaning remained. Alara stood in silence, surrounded by her crew, surrounded by the memory of every civilization that had ever reached for the stars. She thought about Kiev. She thought about her fallen friends. She thought about everyone who had given their lives to bring this crystal home. They had done more than save the Rytian. They had awakened something ancient. They had proven something important. They had shown the galaxy that memory mattered, that promises mattered, that even the smallest species could carry the weight of history. When the Perseverance finally pulled away from the temple, the alien warships had formed an honor corridor. 100 vessels from a dozen species lined their path, a gesture of respect that had not been given to any species in living memory. Lieutenant Chen looked up from his console. Captain, the Concorde is hailing. They are requesting formal diplomatic relations. All of them. He paused, his eyes wide. Even the Vorn. Alara smiled, clutching the empty crystal case to her chest. The Rytian were safe now. Their memory would live forever. And humanity had taken its first true step into the galaxy. Not as warriors, not as conquerors, but as keepers of memory, carriers of promises, voices for the voiceless. In the Temple of Stars, a new crystal glowed among the ancient lights. And somewhere in the void, Captain Alara Vance whispered a final message to her old friend. We did it, Keith. You will never be forgotten. The stars seemed to shine a little brighter in response.